Hello and welcome to our training today. I'm really glad you could join us. New digs here in my background, so hopefully you're not distracted by my new office settings in the background. That being said, we will get to the topic at hand. Authorized user credit. Should you use a cosigner? Should you not use a cosigner? What are authorized users? How does it work? That's exactly what we're going to decode today. Look, it's really a big deal to understand how authorized users and cosigners work, because we've got some funding programs where 50% of the clients getting funding are using a guarantor. They're using a signer instead of themselves. So just by understanding this concept, how it works, it opens up a tremendous amount of funding options for you, because there's a lot of funding programs that if you don't have what's needed to qualify, you could use somebody as a cosigner. You can use an authorized user to improve the situation so you can. Now, if you're following, we're kind of going on a trend that continues from presentation or training to training to training. Well, last time we talked about how to find the best secure credit cards for your business, how secure credit cards really work, and why a strong business credit profile and score is so important. And we also looked at secure credit cards that are no longer necessary and how you can unlock more funding without even having to tap into secure credit cards. Today, I want to talk about authorized user credit versus cosigner, which is best if you're going to go with one of these two options. So to answer the question, well, we've really got to figure out what you're trying to do. We got to figure out what your goal is. Is your goal to get funding? Do you need access to credit to build business credit? Are you trying to build business credit? You're just trying to get immediate money. Why do you need a cosigner or authorized user at all? What's the situation causing the problem? Do you have credit issues, or you're a startup? Do you not have the collateral that's needed to qualify for some funding? You know, the answers to this really determine which of these different avenues might be best from you, whether you're using somebody as a cosigner, or somebody's being added as an authorized user. Kind of ultimately depends on your end goal. So let's talk about what is an authorized user. Well, an authorized user is basically adding somebody else to your account. So typically it's with a trade line, a line of credit, or a credit card. And as you might guess, an authorized user is authorized to use that account, although that's not typically how it happens. Typically, nowadays in authorized user accounts, the person's never using that credit. They're just being added as an authorized user for the sole purpose of helping the person that they're being added to improve their overall credit profile, right? So I might get added to my dad's, my credit might be new on the consumer side, and I might get added to my dad's credit report or credit card. So it adds, length of credit history. It adds utilization. It adds positive payment history to my credit report. On the business side, a lot of people try to go out and buy trade lines for the same thing, to give lenders and credit issuers the perception that they have a history of managing these accounts, when they're really there as an authorized user. They're not directly typically getting access to the credit to use. They're just getting credit for the credit actually being paid on as agreed. Okay. But again, the account's typically in somebody else's name, and typically you're not getting actual use of that credit. So what's the benefit of this? Well, if you need funding, but don't have the best credit, well, this can help you access funding. Really, we got to look at this on the consumer and the commercial side. Because in the consumer side, there's a lot of benefits of authorized users. They just help a lot of aspects of the overall credit score. So if we look at FICO and how FICO is broken down, 35% of your score's payment history, 30% is utilization, 15% is how long you've had credit for. I'm going to stop there. But just those three factors alone account for 80% of the overall score. So if I get added to my dad's credit card account that he's had for 10 years and has a $20,000 limit, that helps me with all of those. I get credit for his payment history. I get credit for his utilization. I get credit for his length of credit history. So overall, it's a significant improvement pretty quick to my FICO score, because I'm actually accessing that, and that helps my consumer credit score, which makes it easier to qualify for funding. Now, business is way different. Business isn't really perceived that way. This is pretty odd in business. Most time, we're not adding authorized users in the business world. So as a matter of fact, it could be a hindrance here, because what it does is it throws up more red flags. It throws up a lot more red flags when you're doing the business world, because it's not typical to be added as an authorized user to somebody's account. So if you're buying trade lines per se, that's not a common thing. As a matter of fact, the companies that sell trade lines are on a list with the credit bureaus, where if you're even dealing with them and they see inquiries in your credit reports from those credit card or those companies, they even throw up red flags and red flag your report saying, hey, be aware, they're dealing with a company that typically is putting these trade lines on somebody's credit report. So again, it depends on if it's consumer or commercial, but you got to think about the purpose, because the benefit on the consumer side is pretty big. I mean, you can see a pretty dramatic improvement of your credit score just by adding one person, because again, you're impacting so many aspects of that overall FICO score. So it can also work again on the personal side to be able to build your credit easier. Okay, eventually leads to getting accounts in your own name based on your credit worthiness. And of course, it gets you access to those funds. So there's not really any benefits for the actual account holder that's helping you unless you're paying them. And this is why people sell trade lines. But there's a huge benefit to you. So for example, here, my kids are 10 and 12. And at a very young age, I added my kids as authorized users to my credit cards. Now, that's no longer permitted. The law changed years ago where you've got to get a date of birth. And if they're not 18, this can't be done. But I did it because I want them to have excellent credit by the time they get ready to use that credit. And they do. They have, 800 credit scores, and they will when they turn 18. Hopefully they don't mess it up. I'll teach them financial principles when they don't do that, right? But this is a benefit, right? My dad added me as a cosigner to a truck loan when I was in the Air Force. That's how I started building credit. So there's not a benefit to my dad. There's not a benefit. As a matter of fact, that could hurt him if I pay the account as not as agreed as a cosigner. As an authorized user, I can't even use the credit card, so it doesn't make a difference. But again, the overall benefit here is to typically the person that's getting the account added to their credit report, not the person that's actually adding it. That's why family member, people that are close to you are typically the ones that will do this for you, unless it's companies that sell them. And then there's a whole other level of problems because the credit bureaus recognize those companies. So what are the drawbacks? Well, if you need to build business credit, for example, being an authorized user really isn't an option. As we talked about, people think they're going to go out and buy trade lines, but that's just not really the case. We don't see authorized users added as trade lines in the business world. And so when that does happen, when somebody does add you, it throws up red flags immediately because the credit issuer, because the credit bureaus know how rare that is. So if your name, not the name of the business, is listed as authorized user, it doesn't really affect your business credit at all. So you can use the funds, but your business really isn't going to reap any credit benefits of getting added as an authorized user. Now, payments will be reported to the account holder's personal credit, and any benefits you get will be on your personal credit. So from a business perspective, if somebody's added as an authorized user on a personal credit card, it doesn't really make a difference. And in the business world, we don't really see authorized users to be as popular as they are in the consumer world. As a matter of fact, throws red flag if you're even using them. So that brings us to buying trade lines. I mean, look, this is really a shady practice when it comes to authorized users and business credit. There are businesses that sell these trade lines, and they claim that you can rapidly get accounts reporting to your business credit profile by getting trade lines. Even worse, they claim that they can add these trade lines to your credit report, and then you're immediately going to go to Bank of America and get a $250,000 credit line. I see people get caught in that trap where they're like, hey, we're going to add 3 $50,000 credit lines, authorized user accounts to your business credit reports, and then you're going to be able to walk into Bank of America and get $250,000. And Kimberly, thanks for coming in and saying hello. If you don't mind, Kimberly, tell me where you're from. As a matter of fact, if you're chiming in, tell me where you're from. Tell me the city and state. I always like to give you a shout out. It only takes you like maybe 3 to 5 seconds of typing to tell me where you're from. So Kimberly, thanks for coming in from YouTube and saying hello. And I always like to hear where you're from. So that being said, there's just really no benefit here, because the problem is that you're not going to go convince Bank of America because you added 3 trade lines to your credit report that they should give you $250,000. They can see how long those trade lines have been there. They can see that you bought those from companies that sell them. They can see all kinds of information because they're obviously very familiar with this practice. So there's really no shortcuts when it comes to buying business credit, and even or building business credit, and even buying trade lines might sound tempting. It's a lot of problems, because while being added as an authorized user by someone is a legitimate way to access funds and build personal credit, buying trade lines is not a good idea. The companies that sell these are red flagged. And let's say they even sell it to you as your trade line. Well, you're responsible for that debt. Somebody else has access. They can accrue credit on that credit card or credit line, and then all of a sudden you're responsible for that. We see the same thing with buying shelf corporations. The minute you take ownership of that business, you're responsible for the business. If the business is a victim of or being sued in lawsuits, if the victim has debtors and people they owe money to, you took over the business. You're responsible. So as a matter of fact, it can go deeper, where all of a sudden you're responsible for all these things that you typically don't want to be responsible for. Delaware's in the house. Hello, Atlanta, Georgia. Kimberly Van Jenkins is in here too. From Atlanta. And thanks for coming in from Philly, Shana. I appreciate you saying hello. And Kimberly says, I'm part of a program. I've fallen off the credit wagon, but I'm getting back on. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting back on the wagon. It's important to be able to get the money you need. So again, when you pay for trade lines, you're actually paying to be added as an authorized user to someone else's account. It's called piggybacking, and it's a deceptive practice in the business world. It doesn't really give any indication of the credit worthiness of the business. As a matter of fact, this is really seen as borderline fraudulent in the business world, because the only reason you're doing it is to change the perception lenders and credit issuers have about you to try to get money. So everybody tries to do this, but if you really look about it, misrepresenting yourself to a bank to obtain money is the definition of fraud. And I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice, but anybody in this space, whether it be the FTC, whether it be the attorney generals of the states, whether it be the business credit reporting agencies, I have, presentations I do that talk about trade lines, that talk about shelf corps, that give quotes from every one of these organizations so you can see the perception they have. But the perception that they have is it's a very deceptive practice. You're trying to obtain credit falsely to basically misrepresent your business to lenders and credit issuers to give them money that you're not really entitled to get. So it's really, really, really a treacherous area in the business space that you probably really want to consider staying away from. So another problem with buying business trade lines, as we mentioned, is that it doesn't usually even give you access to the credit you're getting. It's not like there's an actual benefit. So it's not like you're able to access that credit and use that credit. So it's not like you're getting that benefit. I mean, the whole process gives a false impression of the authorized user's creditworthiness, which is why lenders and credit issuers don't like it. So here's what happens. ABC Company sells trade lines. So ABC Company inquires into your business credit reports, let's just say with Dun & Bradstreet, to see what trade lines are on there now. That's part of their process. They pull your business credit report with D&B, and then they authorize you from there. The problem is that D&B, being that their entire job is to accumulate data on businesses, right? That's their job. They're, a massive, massive company that's whole purpose is to gather data on businesses and then assess that data for risk. So they know that these companies sell trade lines. They know it. So what happens is when they put that inquiry on your credit report, then what happens is Dun & Bradstreet then puts an alert on your credit report notifying lenders and credit issuers that a company that sells trade lines has put an inquiry on your credit report, that a first step has been taken for you to actually obtain trade lines. Now, the scary thing is that we've had clients that have this problem and never even inquired into buying trade lines. The trade line selling companies inquired into their credit report without even their permission, without them even knowing it. And it became a nightmare for us to clean up. So this creates the problems, and this is how it works: is ABC Company sells trade lines. Dun & Bradstreet knows what ABC Company does. ABC Company has a potential customer, ZXY Company. They put an inquiry on ZXY's Dun & Bradstreet credit report. Dun & Bradstreet sees the ABC Company that sells trade lines has put the inquiry on the credit report. They immediately put alert on ZXY's credit report saying, hey, they're talking to a trade line buying company, be aware. Then that triggers all kinds of issues in the algorithms for lenders and credit issuers because they feel like you're trying to deceive them. So the business associated with the credit score of the original account holder to begin with, even though the owner doesn't have good credit or established credit on their own, then what you're ultimately trying to do is deceive the lender and credit issuer to make them think that your credit is better than it is. So meaning that if you buy trade lines, you could basically be piggybacking also off an account of someone who's deceased or doesn't even know what's happening. And that's the problem, is that when you're buying these from another company, you don't know where they got the trade lines they're selling you. And if they illegally obtain those trade lines, which, by the way, a lot of times is the case, they're selling you authorized users from a company that's no longer in business, or an individual that's deceased, or a social security number that's bogus. And then what happens is you're susceptible. You're the one responsible for the identity theft. You're the one responsible for the repercussions because you're the ones using that trade line. So when we look at what the FTC says and attorney generals and all these organizations that handle the laws and the legal aspects of what happens in this country, they all have the same warnings. A lot of the time, the problem is the source that's selling you the trade line is getting it from places illegally, and then you're responsible for it because you're the one that took on the trade line. So that's another whole element of risk you got to worry about, is the company you're dealing with that got the trade line, where did they get the trade line from? It's why if you're having your dad, like in my example, add you as an authorized user, that's one thing. FICO completely allows for that to happen. It's a way for us to help our kids especially build credit initially because it's very tough for them. My dad did for me. I'm doing it for my kids as well, right? But the problem is that, again, in the business space, when you're buying trade lines from people you don't even know where they're coming from, this is a very common practice that's taking place. And again, they know all the tricks. Lenders and creditors, issuers, they know these tricks. And it's astonishing to me. I talk to people every single day that are like, hey, should I buy a shelf corporation? Why are you buying a shelf corporation? Well, to create longevity with the business so I can make it easier to get credit and financing. So you're going to buy a business that's already established to try to convince lenders and credit issuers that you've been around longer than you have. Right. Well, you really think Bank of America is that stupid? I mean, the number one expense Bank of America has is trying to prevent fraud. Like of all the banks, the biggest amount of money they spend is on fraud prevention. They know what you're doing, and I'll tell you how they know it. One way, one of many. When an ownership changes, so let's say I own a company and then I put it on a shelf and I sell it to you. Now you buy the company from me. An ownership change takes place. The Secretary of State record is updated that an ownership change takes place. The bureaus get notified this takes place. They get an alert that an ownership interest has changed, and they put it on your credit report. They update your credit report that an ownership change took place at this point in time. And at that point, they do what's called re-aging. They consider your business to be a brand new business as of the date the ownership interest took change. As a matter of fact, lenders, credit issuers, the credit bureaus, they all do exactly the same thing. They re-age the credit report and look at the day that the ownership change took place as the entity founding date instead of the date you actually set up the entity. This is exactly why I say that you've got to set up business bank accounts early, because if you ever have an ownership change in the business, they're going to default to when the bank account was open. And if you bought a shelf corp from somebody, the shelf corp didn't come with a bank account. So you open the shelf corp today, an ownership interest change takes place today. Now lenders, credit issuers, and the credit bureau consider your baby to be an infant. You were just created today and you spent thousands for a shelf corp that actually doesn't really work. Maryland's in the house. Chicago's in the house. Jackson, Georgia, thanks for coming in. Stephen, thank you for coming in as well. So again, this is the problem, is that I'm still blown away at how many people think that they're going to con Dun & Bradstreet, con Bank of America, con Citi. Like they know what we're doing. They know what you're doing. It's not like it's something you can trick them on. They're going to catch you. And the problem is that DMB in particular will either red flag your credit report or they'll oftentimes shut it down completely. If they absolutely see that you're now all of a sudden you inquire in a business trade line company is inquiring into your credit report and they see the inquiry, then they see those trade lines added. Then what happens is they either red flag or completely shut down your credit report. We see these in the business world all the time. People come to us and they say, hey, I have a problem. Dun & Bradstreet, my credit report's gone. It was there and now it's gone. It's okay. So you establish a credit report, Dun & Bradstreet, and now we pull it and it doesn't exist. Right. It's gone. Okay. 2 questions. Did you buy a shelf corporation or did you buy trade lines? 100% of the time, it's always, yeah, I did A or B. One of those 2 options. Now, what do I do to fix it? You start over. There's no fixing it. You tried to con the credit bureaus, lenders, and credit issuers. You got caught. They shut down your credit report. The credit report's gone. You'll never get that back because you can't go tell them you didn't do what you did do. And now it's gone. Now you start over. And that's the reality. And it's a very sad thing because in a lot of cases, those people have legitimately built a lot of credit on their own. Then they bought a trade line or did something else. And then sometimes years later, it comes back haunts them and all the legitimate credit's gone because it's removed because of all the fake credit they added. So again, this is the problem, is they red flag and then they shut down your credit report. And again, this can happen for years to come. Okay, so even years down the road, if Dun & Bradstreet now all of a sudden recognizes that ABC company out there is selling trade lines, and you got trade lines 3 years ago, and now today Dun & Bradstreet realizes that that's what ABC company does, then Dun & Bradstreet goes back historically of all those inquiries ABC put on your business credit report, And then from there, they start shutting down or red flagging credit reports based on everybody they believe bought these trade lines from ABC company. Very realistic. This happens all the time. And again, it will haunt you for years to come because the credit bureaus can and will come back and red flag the credit report or shut them down altogether. Now, as I mentioned, very different in the personal world. In the personal world, these are very legitimate. As a matter of fact, authorized users are a great way to build consumer credit, not necessarily the ones you're buying from other companies. And again, the bigger problem from buying them from other companies is you don't know what you're buying. You don't know who that authorized user came from. And if it was from a stolen social security number, or if it was from a deceased individual, as an example, as they commonly are, by the way, that's not, again, coming from me. That's the FTC. That's Attorney General's. If you look at buying trade lines or Shelf Corporation, my training on youtube.com/credit suite, and just search, you'll see quotes from the FTC, from the FBI, from the credit bureaus, from the lenders that actually talk about this. And they'll actually show you the time people spend in prison and how they get busted and all the people that got in trouble for one company, buying all these trade lines for or authorized user accounts from dead, deceased individuals. There's all kinds of issues that come from that. And the problem is if that takes place, you're the one responsible for the identity theft. Yeah, the company that actually sold you the trade line is, and you are too, because you're the one that's actually using it. So again, when we talk about authorized users, to wrap this part of it up, first of all, you really need to consider authorized users as a consumer. If your credit file is light, if you're trying to improve your credit scores, if certain aspects of your FICO scores are just not good, you don't have long credit history, you don't have a good credit mix, you can't get high limits, getting added as an authorized user to a friend or really preferably a family member's account, very legitimate way to build your business credit. You got to be really tough. You got to be really cautious buying them from a company because you don't know where they got those authorized users from. And again, if they came from a shady, from a legal source, which they oftentimes do, then you're responsible for that, which is a huge problem. On the business side, you don't want to do it at all. You never want to buy trade lines. You never want to be added as an authorized user. It's very rare. Your credit profile gets red flagged or gets shut down, and it can and will happen for years and years and years to come. So again, and you don't get any benefit. You're not deceiving lenders and credit issuers and the credit bureaus. You're not deceiving them by adding trade lines that aren't even yours to your credit report. They know what you're doing. They see it. And as a matter of fact, not only do they see it, but then they put alerts out there notifying others of exactly what you're doing. So some things to keep in mind. So what about a cosigner? Well, cosigner is basically someone who signs onto a credit account that's in your name. They agree to pay if you don't. So basically, it's a guarantor, but the term cosigner is generally associated with credit cards and trade lines, while the term guarantor is oftentimes more associated with loans. And in most cases, a cosigner has to be associated with a business, though some accounts may allow exceptions to this. Okay, so again, the thing to keep in mind is that with cosigners, you're basically going to somebody and they're signing along with you. So they're saying if you default, well, then they'll pay the bill. So this is kind of the same as collateralizing a debt, but instead of using a collateral or an asset, the lender or credit issuer can come after if you default. With a cosigner, you're creating a situation where they can come after the cosigner's credit, the cosigner's assets, et cetera, as well. So using a cosigner to help you get a business credit account, is not a bad idea if it's a credit account that you're not going to typically get approved for. Because the account's in a business name, that person signed has got personal guarantee, and the cosigner is basically acting as a secondary guarantor. So if you don't pay, well, they're responsible. But if you do pay, especially if the account reports to a business credit reporting agency, well, then you're building business credit at the same time. So again, there are benefits here, absolutely, because it can actually be a stepping stone. So I'll give you an example. We've got a program called Credit Line Hybrid. Somebody can get up to $150,000 in credit lines as a startup business, 0% rates, no doc. It's a great way to go. You don't need collateral. It's unsecured. You don't need cash flow or revenue. Very popular. As a matter of fact, of all the programs we fund, this one, we do more fundings with than all other programs. That being said, with this program, you have to have good credit, 680, 700 FICO scores. A lot of our clients don't. So they use cosigners instead. Now, a cosigner comes in. They're the actual guarantor. They sign to get the accounts. We use their good credit to qualify. And the accounts we get, a lot of them report to the business credit reporting agencies. So somebody went and got a guarantor. The guarantor is there in case you default. The credit reports on the business credit reporting agencies to the business credit reporting agencies and build the business credit of the company that went and got the cosigner. So now the company that's building their business credit's really benefiting. They jump-started their business credit building because all those accounts report to the business credit reports, okay, and they didn't have to have good credit to get it. The actual cosigner doesn't really benefit unless you give them equity, give them some kind of financial reward for being a cosigner, whatever it may be. So, for example, I might have bad credit, but I have all the expertise and knowledge to run and grow the business. You might have good credit, but you just want to earn a rate of return on what I'm doing. You don't want to run the business. You and I might work it out where your credit can be used as a guarantor for me to get Credit Line Hybrid, to get $100,000 to get the business off the ground. And your benefit of that is I'm going to give you 10% equity. So since you're basically funding the business because you're the guarantor, then I'm going to give you a percentage of ownership in the business, or I'm going to give you X amount of dollars at X interest rate in return, whatever reward I want to give you. So again, if you're business partners, this is pretty common. If that person doesn't have ownership in the business, maybe they just want to help you. And that's another way to consider this, right? Is that if I go to my dad and I say, Dad, I need $20,000 to get a business off the ground. Well, my dad would give me the 20 because he knows I'd pay him back, but he would go sell stocks to get the 20. Now he's got tax penalties. Now he's not earning interest on that 20 grand, right? But if I go to my dad and I say, hey, Dad, I need 20 grand to get the business off the ground. There's this great program called Credit Line Hybrid. I just need you to sign as a guarantor. The way you lose out is if I don't pay. If I don't pay this debt, then these could show up as collections on your credit report and they could come after you for the money. But you know me, you know I'm responsible, you know I'm going to pay the credit off. And the benefit to me is these accounts report to the business credit reporting agency so they don't adversely affect your consumer credit unless I default. I'm building business credit. I get the money I need, and you can help me without liquidating your stocks, paying penalties, etc. So just some common examples here of how guarantors can work to help you in a business. Again, whether they're getting some kind of reward or whether it's just somebody you know that was going to help you anyways, but this gives them an easier way to help you. So even though using a signer like this is a way to get funding and can help you build business credit, if you can't get funding on your own right now, you need to know, you need to get to a point where that isn't necessary. So it's not to say that this is always going to be the solution. It's just to say that this can absolutely fill the void while you're improving your personal credit and work on those things. So authorized user credit versus cosigner. Well, for the business funding, a cosigner is a better option. When it comes to getting money for a business, a signer is going to be a better option. Because again, it's not looked at as a deceptive practice. It can actually help you build a strong business credit profile because you're building business credit at the same time. And it means you're in a better position to get funding. And it will also eliminate the need for a cosigner altogether in the future. So again, when it comes to getting funding, well, a guarantor is probably a better way to go because they can actually help you build business credit with the right type of accounts that they're a guarantor for. And on top of that, you're building business credit, which is going to make you more fundable in the future, and it's easy to get funding. So in that case, it's easier to be added as a cosigner, to actually use a guarantor. Now, if we talk a little bit about credit partners, there's another option. Okay. And with credit partners, basically you're dealing with a business partner that has a strong credit. And this allows the business to basically get money based on the credit worthiness of that partner. But often those accounts will report to the business credit reporting agencies. And again, the business reaps the benefits. Exactly what I talked about before, but this is happening not from somebody outside of your business, but somebody inside your business. So I'll give you an example. Credit Suite is owned by two people, right? There's two of us. There's Megan, there's the COO, my partner who works in the back end, runs all the operations, builds the systems, and does all that stuff. And then I'm here too. I'm the other partner, right? And I handle the marketing and the sales and the promotions and stuff to that effect. So Megan and I have a choice when we go to get funding of whether or not to use, whether or not oftentimes we're going to use her credit, my credit, both of our credit. And part of that depends on how much ownership interest you have in the business. But the bottom line is she's my partner. So if she's got a strong credit profile and it helps me, then I can use her as a signer to be able to do this. And this is a perfect example with Credit Line Hybrid. We use Credit Line Hybrid to get funding. We use that to get credit lines. That's how our monthly expenses that we use on credit cards, credit lines, we use the same program, Credit Line Hybrid. Sometimes, in almost all cases, it's me that applies. I use my credit to get them. But at any given time, I can shift and Megan can use hers. And the only difference is who's the guarantor. We're partners. So I'll get the credit and I'm on the hook. I'm the guarantor, or she'll get the credit and she has the. But we can get a lot more money if we both use our credit to go pursue that money. So again, as business partner, it helps because she can use her credit and be a guarantor to get funding. I can use my credit as a guarantor to get funding as well. And Stephen actually asks about a credit partner. So hopefully this is exactly what you're actually asking about. If not, go ahead and clarify. So again, the nice thing is that you're building business credit. If you're doing this with accounts that report to the business credit reporting agencies, then you're building business credit while getting the actual money that you need. And that's very important because if you have damaged consumer credit where you need an authorized user or you need a guarantor, well, then building business credit is a good way to offset that. And what I mean by that is that if I have a damaged personal credit profile, but a really good business credit profile, the really good business credit profile compensates for the damaged consumer credit profile, and it kind of helps carry me. So if you have damaged consumer credit, you really got to establish business credit because it gives you a lendable asset where lenders can look at that and not as much look at personal credit. You're like, it's like a magician. It's like, look over here, don't look over here, right? Look over here at my business credit. Don't look at my personal credit. The reality is they're going to look at your personal credit, but it's less weight if they see that your business can stand on its own and your business is paying all of its bills as agreed as well. Okay. So again, credit line hybrid, guarantors, signers, these a lot of cases can help you with the building of business credit at exactly the same time as improving your overall consumer credit profile. So many business owners wonder about authorized users, and authorized users in the personal world make a lot of sense. They really do. They can really help your overall FICO score, and you can see a pretty big spike to your scores pretty quickly. The negative is you don't want to do that in the business world. You want to avoid trade lines, authorized users, anything in the business world you want to avoid. It's more problems than it's ever going to be, than it's what it's worth. You want to avoid buying business trades, avoid buying shelf corporations for the business. The credit bureaus, lenders, credit issuers know what you're doing, and what they're going to do is they're going to red flag your credit report. Now, being a cosigner, a guarantor, a credit partner, that makes a lot of sense. If your credit is damaged, work on fixing it, obviously, and authorized users could help you with that on the personal side. Also, build business credit. It gives you a compensating asset for having damaged personal credit. But also keep in mind that you can use a guarantor instead of yours, whether they be a partner in your business, a family member, a friend, a potential investor, whoever it may be. Use their credit to help you get the funding you need, and it helps you build business credit, which helps you fix the underlying problem of not being lendable because of credit issues. So guarantors, signers, very, very, very smart way to be able to get money. Speaking of money, next time we'll be talking about money management alternatives and how some of these can actually help you manage funds and cash flow, and also help you build a strong business credit profile, and how to choose the best one for your business. So making sure you keep an eye out for that training. If you got value, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the love button, and give us a call for a free consultation. On a consultation call with us, we'll do a fundability assessment to figure out what's wrong with your fundability and what you need to improve to be more fundable. We'll help you get your business credit reports for free from the business reporting agencies, go over those with you and give you tips and tactics to improve your business credit. And we'll do a funding qualification to tell you all the credit lines and loans, the funding you can get right now. It all happens on a free consultation. You can email us for that, info@creditsuite.com. You can call us 877-600-2487, 877-600-2487, or you can also go and schedule online at creditsuite.com/consult. If you got value, hit the like button, hit the love button. Don't forget to keep an eye out for the next content that we put out there, next training on how to get more money for your business. We go live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, or in LinkedIn, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday and Thursday at 1, Wednesday at 11, all Eastern time. We've got hundreds or thousands now of videos on our YouTube channel. We have daily tips on Instagram, on Twitter as well. And we also have a podcast with nearly 600 episodes. You can listen on the go that helps you not only get money for your business, but helps you with bringing in experts on all aspects of growing a successful business. So if you want to know more than just getting capital, and you want to know how to start a business, how to market a business, how to build your branding, how to become more profitable, how hacks to actually grow the business faster, that all happens on our podcast, The Business Credit Financing Show. You can access all of those links on the top right of our page, creditsuite.com. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your feedback. Thanks for telling me where you're from. Thanks for your questions, comments along the way. I look forward to seeing you on our next training, where we talk about more cool ways to get money to start and grow